I think we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Getting Started with Amazing Marvin webinar. It's 4th of July, so if you are watching and you are in the US, thank you very much, because I know it's 4th of July, a holiday. And so I'm kind of curious, maybe who's here. You can always introduce yourself in the chat. And I'm Christina, by the way, and I'm one of the founders of Amazing Marvin. And Mark, the other founder, is in the background, and he will be in the chat, so you can always talk to him there or ask questions, and I will try to answer any questions later. I'm assuming we're not going to be too many people today, so really feel free to ask a lot of questions and kind of ask specific questions. It's maybe a good time I can help you with something kind of specific. So yeah, let's jump into it. So let's get into these slides. Yeah, if you want to, you can introduce yourselves in the chat. I will always love to hear who you are, and if you've already started using Marvin, or if you're just kind of checking it out, maybe what you used before, just anything you want to share. I always love to read about this. So just really quickly, what is Amazing Marvin? It is a productivity tool, which you probably already know, and it's me and my husband who created it. It was originally something I just created for myself because I really needed it, and yeah, it's turned into this product now that other people are using and are our job, and what we do and focus on, and we love it. This is our roadmap. So something that a lot of people appreciate about Marvin is that we really actively work on it. And we have a lot of really cool things planned, and we really take input from our users and try to make everybody happy. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but that's really kind of the company we love to create and we're working on. We just love to sort of do this together with our users. And so this is some of the stuff we have planned for Marvin. So if you've used another productivity app before, maybe Todoist or TickTick or any of the other big popular ones, it can be a bit confusing when you first start using Marvin because there are some key differences. So in this webinar, I hope that by the end of it, all those question marks will be cleared up. You don't have to fully understand every little detail about Marvin. Obviously, there's a lot to explore, as it is with every productivity app. It just kind of takes time. But there's some key differences in the core concept, and that's what I'm kind of going to focus on, and also to help you get started with it, so that the first steps to take. So our key concept, or kind of the idea behind Marvin, is that we really want to help a person find their perfect productivity system, because a big thing we believe in is that different things work for different people. There's not one system out there that just works for everybody. The perfect system is the one that you create for yourself. So it's really tailored to your work situation and your brain. And Marvin is designed around helping you find that system and being able to sort of play around with it and try different things all in the same app. So you don't have to switch apps to just try different things. And I'm going to show you how Marvin accomplishes that. So the two unique things about Marvin are the core system, which is basically a combination of a to-do list and a calendar, but not in the way that you might expect, and the customizability factor. And what you see right here is what we call strategies. They're basically features that you can turn on and off, and many of them you can customize. And that's what creates a very, very flexible and customizable system, so that you can try out different things, but not have things that you don't need cluttering up your view. And it also is a great way to explore productivity strategies and things that you could try to sort of, help with some of the pain points you experience in your system when you're trying to work or plan. So let's talk about this core concept. And as I said, it's kind of a marriage between a to-do list and a calendar. And I'm going to actually show you inside of Marvin where the to-do list part is and where the calendar part is. The reason why we combine these two things is because we all sort of have the same challenge in life, that we have things that we have to do, And then we have time available where we have to map those tasks into. And if you just have a to-do list, it kind of helps you organize the things you have to do, have overview over it, like so that you can see what there is and you can maybe prioritize it. But it's often missing this sort of time component. And because that's ultimately where you get those things done in the time you have available. And this mapping is what creates so many difficulties and what's really the big core challenge. And a calendar is obviously a map of your time that you have available. And so a lot of people, what they do is, maybe they take tasks and schedule it in the calendar, but that actually comes with a lot of other problems. So we kind of took that approach, though, took the best of both worlds and combined it in a kind of unique way. So again, like to-do lists are definitely necessary because this serve a specific purpose of, being an external storage, so you don't have to try to remember everything. And they kind of help you just have a visual representation of things so that you can kind of manipulate it, right? And not have it all in your head and try to do it there. But to-do lists do have a lot of limitations. And if you Google this, to-do lists don't work, to-do lists are bad, you will find a lot of people talking and writing about it. A lot of productivity experts or people who just sort of discovered this for themselves, that if you just use an app that kind of leaves out this time component, or you don't introduce this with some other app, there's going to be some limitations that you run into and some benefits you miss out on. The answer that they have is always, calendars are better, or you have to schedule your to-dos, and that's the solution. But again, if you actually really use a calendar for that, first of all, it's pretty difficult to find an app that does both of it. And also, for most people, it's a bit too rigid. Like, a lot of things need to be in place for that to work. If you really want to just, day by day, hour by hour, say exactly what you get done. For example, you cannot have a lot of spontaneous interruptions. You need to have very high discipline so you can always actually start what is in your plan, or it just gets all messed up and then it's just a lot of frustration and moving things around. And you need to kind of like having such a strict schedule and plan things out like that ahead of time. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of issues, and Marvin is kind of a more flexible way of doing that. But you can also get the same sort of idea of having tasks on a calendar with Marvin in the feature that we're going to launch very soon with an actually integrated calendar. But let me show you now in Marvin of what I mean with this to-do list and this calendar part, because again, the calendar part doesn't look like a normal calendar, so that's why it can be very confusing. Hi Dennis, by the way, and hi Anna. Okay, so this is Marvin. Probably already familiar with this. And let me show you the to-do list part, because this is kind of what should look familiar to you when you're coming from another app. And we call this the master list. You can, by the way, I have a bunch of other things here on the left, which is just the stuff from the strategies I've turned on. But so here's the master list. And this is where you store all your tasks. This is where they just live like in another app where you can organize them. Now, this is kind of the first thing you want to do. You want to get actually your tasks into Marvin so you can do stuff with them. And so you have to think about how you want to organize your master list. And this is where Marvin is maybe a bit different too than other apps you're used to, because we have categories and projects, so two different items. And of course, we also have tasks. So let's maybe start with the tasks, because that's probably what you're most familiar with. And tasks basically are single action items. So, take out the trash. And they have a checkbox next to them. And we recommend that you try to keep tasks between 5 minutes and an hour. So something you can do kind of in one work session, like you sit down and you do it and then you check it off. Now there's of course sometimes exceptions, but this is a general rule that's good to stick to. You should also try to make them start with a verb so that they're immediately sort of triggering an action in your brain that you have to take. And they should be pretty specific. So specific verbs are better than just sort of verbs like do. So you really know what you need to do. Now, projects is where you can kind of combine multiple tasks that maybe take you multiple days or multiple weeks to do. So again, like in other apps, you might have just created one big task, but in Marvin, we recommend you try to maybe make a project. And projects have these flag icons. And I like to think of it like a mountain of tasks and you're trying to conquer it. And then when you're done, you get to put the flag in it. So the goal is to finish this project, right? It has a limited amount of tasks and at some point it's completed. You can add projects with shortcuts, and we actually have a lot of shortcuts. And I'm going to just show you quickly where you can sort of see all the shortcuts. If you go to the top right, Help and Resources, and then Shortcuts, you get this little menu on the side where you can see the global shortcuts, meaning they work from anywhere in Marvin. Task input shortcuts, which is ways that you can add details to tasks quickly, and then different types of shortcuts for different overlays. So when I say overlay, you might have noticed that when you go somewhere else other than this view, which is the main view, like the master list, it kind of just opens up over it. So whenever you get out of it, you get back to this main view. And I'm going to explain a bit why this is later when we talk about what this view even is. But let's get back to the master list. So again, we have tasks, and then we can organize them in projects, and categories, which are these folders. They help you just get even more organization so that you can sort your projects and your tasks in different ways. And you can assign them colors. On the very left, we call those main categories because they're sort of the big ones that hold everything else. And most people have maybe like 3 to 7. And you kind of think about what areas in your life you usually have things that you want to get done. And then you create them and pick a color here that you associate with that. And this color will be used throughout Marvin so that it's also easier for you to identify where a task belongs to what area of your life. So yeah, this is the first thing that you should probably do. And do not overthink it. You can always move things around later and switch things up. But yeah, this is definitely an important part of Marvin because it's like your storage, and it helps you just sort of feel like in control, that you have an overview of what needs to be done. But now we get to this part, because this is sort of the first thing you see. So what is this if all your tasks live in a master list? This is what we call the day view. And here on the left, you can see my day is highlighted. And because, this is your day, it only shows you one day at a time. If you're used to maybe making a daily to-do list on paper or something, this is basically what that is. It just shows you what you want to get done that day. And in the sidebar on the left, you can always see what day you're on. So today is, July the 4th. And you can go to any other day because every day has basically its own view and its own list. Now, if you think about it, this is really like a calendar, except that you're just seeing one day at a time. But this list here is basically assigned to July 4th. So the same way that you would schedule tasks into a calendar, you schedule tasks to a specific day. And you can schedule tasks in different ways. So if you're in the master list, anywhere where you see a task, there's this little calendar icon. Again, because basically you're putting them on your calendar, making an intention to do it on a certain day. You can click Schedule Task and then say today or tomorrow shortcuts, or just pick any day from your calendar here. And then they will show up. So let's schedule this for today, for example. They will get a bit grayed out in your master list because they're still there. There's still something you have to do, but they're one step closer to being done because you now made an intention to do them on a specific day. And scientifically, when you make an intention of when you want to do something, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to actually do it. So this is why scheduling, a big advantage of scheduling. So then it will show up in our today list. And again, when you click and when you hover over tasks, you get all these little buttons where you can do things like you might not have this many yet. These are just strategies I've turned on. And you can delete them and undo them by clicking on this little thing that pops up on the top right. But yeah, so this is kind of the core idea of Marvin. And you can also schedule your tasks by clicking on this little sun. This is actually changed now in the new update. But basically, you get the master list here in the sidebar. And you can expand anything, and you can always see how many tasks there are unscheduled. Because again, if they're already in your day, you said, you know, I want to do this on Friday. You don't have to think about it today when it's Wednesday, because you already decided you're going to do it on Friday, and it makes sense to do it on Friday, I assume, otherwise you wouldn't have scheduled it. So then you just can kind of not worry about it until you get to Friday, and then you just always focus on your daily list. And this is real stressful. And why think about things you don't have to think about yet? Like, we can only do one thing at a time. So it makes sense to also just focus sort of on one day at a time. And speaking of one thing at a time, you might have already discovered the super focus mode, where you can literally just see one thing at a time from your daily list and work it off like that if the daily list overwhelms you too, which happens to me a lot. So definitely highly recommend the focus mode. So I hope this makes sense with this whole to-do list and calendar, that this is basically the calendar part where you schedule tasks. Now, when we talk about workflows, and workflows, to explain what I mean is, you know, when you want to have a productivity system, that means that you kind of want to have a process, certain types of, you know, rules or predefined ideas of how you go about mapping those tasks to your time and then getting them done, right? Because otherwise you would have to constantly make these decisions all the time. So you kind of want to have a system, because systems are efficient. And a workflow is just a specific sort of part of that workflow, your productivity system. And I have a lot of other webinars that go over some workflow ideas, because it can be very helpful to get some ideas on how to solve specific challenges, like how do I best plan my day? Actually, the webinar that's right after this is going to be about planning your day. And even if you don't use Marvin, it will be helpful, because it's very, you know, not app specific. But we'll just go over different techniques on how to plan your day. So yeah, if you want to know more about maybe how specifically to plan your day, maybe tune in for that a bit later. So let's see, are there any questions right now about this calendar and master list part? I think there isn't. Okay, otherwise I can also cover them later. So now let's talk about due dates, because this is another big confusion, and it's partially due because all the other to-do apps, or most of them, they have due dates, right? And you add due dates to things, and then you get to see the sidebar where you can click on today, and you see everything that's due today, and you can see the next 7 days, and you see everything that's due the next 7 days. And Marvin has due dates as well, but we also have due dates, so DO dates and DUE dates. Basically, when you decide to do something today, you have a due date, a DO date, meaning you want to do it this day. And everything that has a deadline needs a due date, so that you know, but when is the last day that you can do this task without, you know, it having some consequence. And to add a due date, you can click on the edit task and then pick a due date. Now, if the due date's tomorrow, it will be red, because then it's kind of urgent, so it should stand out in your day list so that you know, okay, I probably should do this today. But of course, you know, it might be due in 7 days, and you can always see when a task is due. And so our recommendation is that projects that do have a fixed deadline, assign them a due date. If a task has a fixed deadline, assign them a due date. And if they don't. Because again, in Marvin, there's other ways that you can achieve anything else. Like if you've used them before, maybe to set artificial deadlines or all that, because you do want to know if something actually has a deadline or not. So yeah, that's the differentiation between due dates and due dates. And let's get into the strategies. Or actually, there's something else that is kind of important for the setup. So when you set this up, right, you obviously want Marvin to make your life easier. And there are some tasks that we do in regular intervals. You know, maybe you want to remember to pay the bills every 2 weeks or every month. And this is not something that you should kind of think of manually. And for that, we have recurring tasks. You can go to the top right and set up recurring items here, or you can just do it in your master list. So for example, in household, there's obviously a lot of recurring tasks in the household. So I made this cleaning plan, which I set up as a category, because it's something that, you know, never is really done, sadly. It always just gets dirty again. So here, I can just show you, let's say we want to have a new task of clean bathroom. And again, if this is something you know you do anyway and you don't want to be reminded of to do it, then you don't have to put it in your to-do list. But you can turn this task into a recurring task by clicking on this edit task and then make task recurring. And then you get to set up the pattern. So probably don't want to do it daily, but you know, maybe you want to do it X times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or every X days. So basically a lot of different patterns you can set up here. And you can also give it an automatic due date for saying X days after creation. But yeah, this is very, very helpful. And most people have quite a bit of recurring tasks because there's just things we have to do again and again. And it makes sense to be reminded of more, like watering plants or, you know, washing the sheets, because who remembers when it's the last time they washed their sheets? But if you want to do it every 10 days, it's helpful. And the thing about recurring tasks, you can see that they're kind of grayed out. And what you see here is basically just a parent task. It's a bit like where, you know, you define what task you want to show up and you set the pattern. And Marvin will automatically create these tasks and schedule them for you. So if you say you want to do something daily, it makes sense that then in every day you have that task show up, right? So these are basically all recurring tasks that Marvin just scheduled for me already automatically. So yeah, you don't have to worry about them. They'll just show up on the day and you will have them there to remind you that you have to do them. So I guess we can now go to the strategies, which is probably the most fun part of Marvin. If you go to the strategies here at the bottom button in the middle, you see this. And some people get really excited when they see this. They think, wow, there's so many options, so many cool features, so many things that are designed to like help me. And other people also just feel really overwhelmed and think, how am I ever gonna know which ones to turn on? How am I gonna know how to use them? And just try to not be overwhelmed. Take a deep breath. You have all the time in the world. There's no rush. Try to have fun with it. There's no rush to try all the features, and you don't have to turn all of them on. You can just sort of explore them one by one, and there's this little tags here underneath the title to help you figure out what this strategy is about. And I'm going to create more resources soon to kind of help you maybe take a quiz where you can then figure out which strategies might work well for you. And if you already have some kind of system that you liked pretty well from another app, a lot of those basic features are in the basic tag. So you can just click this tag and then you see some of the basic features like, labels and tags and things like that. And to learn more about a strategy, you just click on it and there will be a description. And I'm going to add videos and links to, blog posts with pictures and stuff like that soon. But usually you get the gist of it here. And some of them also have settings where you can kind of customize the strategy and set some things up. But yeah, definitely do not turn all of them on, just, to try to explore it. A really good kind of process is that you just start with a basic workflow, especially if you're sort of just in the beginning of your productivity journey and trying to get organized. Start with just this very basic workflow of having your things here and every day trying to think about what you want to get done today and then making a day plan. And when you run into a problem with this, something that you feel like, actually this part is difficult, like I don't know which tasks to pick, or I always just plan way too much and I don't finish it, or I never know what this task is about. There's usually a solution for all these issues. You can ask in our Marvin community for help, or you can kind of just go explore on your own, or you can write me an email and I'm more than happy to help you. But this is sort of the process of, you try something, you identify things that aren't working, things that don't feel right. Try to be specific and thinking about what is not working for me in this workflow, where are the hurdles? And then trying to think about solutions, because often you will know what would help you. If you, for example, here, this is actually a strategy that shows me sort of this category this is in. This is in cleanup computer project in household. But if I don't have this turned on, often, I see a task and then I don't know what this task is about because maybe I wasn't very specific with the title or I just lack context. And then, it would help me if it told me underneath it, which project this belongs to. And then, you can maybe here try to find it if something like this exists. And yeah, often it does. And again, we also really love to always hear when there's a problem you encounter and there isn't a solution yet, but you might have an idea of what could help you or you don't. But just we love when you write us so that we can come up with a specific solution for that problem, or help you figure out a workaround before we have that feature implemented. So yeah, definitely always write us when you just notice something that isn't quite working. There's usually a solution for it. I think this is it. I went over all the basics, the very, very basics. So feel free to ask me questions or something that you would want to know more about, or if you just kind of want me to show you some more things. Are there any questions, Mark?
We talked about climbing the mountain and how that's to do probably with where the icon came.
Yeah, I actually forgot something. Speaking of that, do you want to tell me the other?
Eric asked about recurring tasks and he likes them.
Mm-hmm.
And Anna asked about whether recurring tasks can schedule in advance so that you can use them while you plan your day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all the questions.
Okay.
Anna is interested in reorganizing her labels. So grouping and reordering she would want to do. So for example, she has a bunch of location labels and it would be nice if they were listed together. So at least if you could reorder them, then she could put them together. But possibly some kind of hierarchy would be useful for her.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably something we can work on. Okay, so I actually just remembered something that is probably kind of important. We did also make a webinar on just projects because working with project is really important. There were a few people who didn't know in the beginning that you could create projects. And once they discovered that and started using it, it was a real game changer for them, especially since a couple of weeks ago we implemented some new features. So this is actually something that's not very obvious. That's why I want to show you. But if you hover over a flag icon, you can click it and kind of zoom in on that project. And on the left here, you get this note where you can just write anything you want. And this is really helpful because a lot of times with projects, we maybe want to have some free-flowing thoughts first, or some creative ideas we want to get out, or just sort of, have something unstructured. And then on the right, you can really get organized and, create sub-projects and then sort of groupings. And so to break larger projects down. Let's see if I actually have a project set up already that's kind of interesting. I think I did this one. So yeah, something like this where you can have your node and then you can sort of group the things, and it's just a really nice way to really be focused on one project. And this is also helpful because if you have a project, you might not want to schedule specific tasks to your day, because it can then quickly become a really long list, and you kind of lose the context. And if you want to work on a project, you probably kind of want to work on multiple tasks of that project at once, and you might not know exactly the order that makes sense. So what you can do is you can drag projects into your day as well from the sidebar, and then it will schedule time to work on those projects. So it will say work 30 minutes on smart list ideas, and you can configure this default time or just change it. You can always edit a title by just clicking on it, which is really simple. And another good thing is that you can always edit the title by adding shortcuts, so you can change the whole task. So if I want to reassign this to something, I would use the pound, and then it shows me, where I can assign it to, and it will auto-complete it. So if I start typing something, and I can add labels like this, and add due dates, or reschedule it. So let's say, actually I want to do this in 7 days, So those are really nice to know, these little shortcuts. And here on the top you have filters and sorting, which can also be very helpful. And probably another quite basic thing that I'm going to show you are these sections, because if you have just this long list of things to do, even for your day, sometimes it can get quite long. It's nice to sometimes kind of get some kind of structure in there. So you can turn on any one of these strategies that have this section label to kind of group things in your day in different ways. So this, I just grouped it by category, but there's others. So yeah, I think these are all the basics. And then here, a lot of things I think are easy to kind of explore. You just sort of click around, mostly very self-explanatory. I think the difficult parts are definitely figuring out which workflow works for you and all, because there's so many possibilities that it can definitely be very overwhelming. But ultimately, in the end, it will feel liberating, because there's nothing worse than, you really getting into a system, start thinking about what works for you and starting to discover what works for you. And then the app that you have doesn't let you do what you want to do. Now that's a big problem, because then you have to go find another app that does it, do all the research, very time consuming. And then again, you might discover something else that this app is missing. And it's very frustrating if you're trying to work in a digital way and you have very specific ideas of how you want to work, which most of us do. And most of us will discover as we invest time in finding a good productivity system. And that's really why we make Marvin very flexible, and we really listen. Nothing is too small. Like if someone tells us, this is just frustrating me that this thing doesn't show there, or I feel like we need something that can do this. We listen, because if this is something you use every day, every little thing can really turn into a big problem and a frustration. And that should not be the case. Like we have enough problems with, the work and our life, and the tool that you use to try to help with your life shouldn't be an additional source of stress and frustration. Now, of course, we can't promise that we can do everything, but so far, if you ask our users, I'd say that they're pretty happy with, the accommodations we're doing for them. And yeah, just the amount of things we already have, and we try to really think about the things that we add and the features that we add, and that they make sense, and that you can create a lot of flexible systems. So, okay, I think this is it. Do you have any open questions left? Or? Okay, so Mark says no questions. So I'm just gonna go turn off the live stream. Oh, lots of compliments, I heard. That's nice. Okay, so if you want to join me in the webinar that starts in half an hour, it's going to be about day planning. I'm going to go over why day planning is really a game changer, and show you all the different ways that you can day plan, because it's really, there's so many different ways to do it, and talk about pros and cons and how you can figure out what might be a good strategy for you, and give you some tips and tricks about day planning. So yeah, if you want to join me there, I'm happy to see you again. Bye.